welcome and great to have you here in your role as Chief Counsel at the Office of the Fair Work Ombudsman. We'd love to have a chat about flexibility and what I think is the best kept secret in Australia, keeping in touch days. But let's start with flexibility. We know that in 2016, the Workplace Gender Equality Agency reported that 52% of organisations have flexible working practices in place. Can you talk to us about what you're seeing in terms of flexibility?
Absolutely. So, under the Fair Work Act, there is now a right to request flexible working arrangements. And I think, one of the things which we often talk about is just what is meant by flexibility. So, traditionally it's kind of thinking about part-time working arrangements and so on, but actually it encompasses a whole range of different arrangements. So, for example, job sharing, it could be a condensed working week, it could be anything. And so really what I'm kind of seeing at the moment is a lot of thinking around what does it actually mean to have a flexible work arrangement.
And I'm right in saying that you have to put your request in writing.
Yeah, so just having a look at the Fair Work Act, what it provides for is that opportunity to request a flexible working arrangement, and it applies to a broad range of people, so not just women who are looking after children, but potentially, for example, someone who's over the age of 55, has caring responsibilities and so on. And if a person does put that request, it does need to be in writing, which I think is sensible in any event. And then there is a requirement for the employer to respond in writing as well with respect to that particular request.
Yeah. So say I'm working full-time and then I take my 12 months paid parental leave. I put in my request to return and reduce to part-time hours. If it's denied, what do I do?
Well, look, an employer is able to deny an application in circumstances where there are reasonable business grounds. So, getting back to the starting point, which is how do you approach this and how do you apply? And I often talk to people about needing to persuade. So really to put yourself in the position of the employer and think about what type of barriers are they going to see and how can I describe that I can overcome those. And if you do that and put your best foot forward, I often talk about also communicating with a trusted colleague or a family friend about what you're putting forward, and then I think that way you're more likely to have a successful application. And if you don't have a successful application, well then what you really need to think about is whether or not those grounds are reasonable and what was the real reason. So if you don't think it was reasonable, then was it for a discriminatory reason that you ultimately were not granted this option? And if that's the case, you should get in contact with us.
Yeah, sure. It's great to hear you talking about the business case, because one of the things that we've included on the Circling website is a resource around building a business case to ask for flexibility. So we've got a great template and resources to help members really build out and get the perfect pitch, because it is about putting your best foot forward.
Absolutely, and I think that's marvellous. And I think in thinking about how to put forward that case, you can be creative and really come up with a whole range of different ways that you can accommodate and make things work for both the employer and the employee.
Yeah. So what if I do request for my role to be reduced to part-time? It's accepted, but then I'm told that it's now at a lower position potentially or a lower pay. Is that acceptable?
No, that's not acceptable. So, particularly in circumstances where you're coming back from maternity leave, there's that right to be able to return to a job, same pay, equal status. So even if it is a different role, it still has to tick those two boxes.
Yeah, sure. So I'd love to now explore some real examples. Where do you stand when they cite business needs as a reason you can't work a particular role in 4 days as opposed to 5?
It's a good question, isn't it? No, I think where you go back to, I'll go back to the pitch. So, why can't it be done in 4 days, and being able to articulate that. And there are some roles where potentially can't be done in 4 days for a whole range of different reasons. The employer is required to provide you with those business grounds in circumstances where they do reject that request. And the question that you need to ponder is, is there any grounds for discrimination within what's being presented, or with some other evidence that you can see surrounding your application?
Yeah, right. I wasn't aware that they had to come back with, a reason, a detailed reason, as opposed to just, citing business needs.
No, that they do actually need to respond in writing to your request, which also needs to be in writing.
Yeah. The next is, my family's experience has been that his workplace culture is quite accepting of women asking for flexibility to do family things like working from home or working school hours. But if he asks to work from home so he can look after a sick child or leave early, he is told flat out that those things are his wife's responsibility.
That's discrimination in the way that you put it, and that was a fairly clear-cut example in my opinion. Clearly this person is being discriminated against because of his sex, his gender, and so it's very interesting because men experience discrimination in the workplace often, and we're only really starting to talk about that now, and men are looking for flexibility as well, and sometimes it looks a little bit different than the flexibility that women look for. But I think that this is an evolving area, and I expect that we'll be talking about it a lot more over the next 10 to 15 years.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. The next is, can I change hours, either 5 days, from 10 to 3, or 4 days from 8:30 to 4:30?
Absolutely. So you've got that right to request a flexible working arrangement, and that is a flexible working arrangement, is to look at the hours that you're working, and so it doesn't have to just be part-time or job share or anything like that. So again, thinking about that process, how do I put my best foot forward, and what am I going to say, and how do I think of things from my perspective but also my employer's perspective, and get that two-way communication going.
Yeah, terrific. I'd love to have a chat about keeping in touch days. It's one of my favourite topics. Can you talk to what are they?
Yeah, well, look, keeping in touch days are days. They're not when you come in and have a cupcake and a coffee with your work colleagues, which is a great thing to do. They're days where you can come to work. Examples would be a planning day where, the particular role you're in the business area is planning for the next 12 months ahead. You're coming back in 3 months' time, but getting there means you're on the same page moving forward for that year. Or maybe it's a training day, for example, where there's a significant investment going on in training, and it's best to have you there, and not really practicable to do that separately upon your return. So 10 days a year by agreement with your employer, and obviously really, really great opportunity. Yeah,
terrific. So we talk about them being a day. What if you go in and you meet with your manager and it's a 1 or a 2 hour meeting? Is that classified as a day?
No, that's not going to count for the purposes of this. This is really designed for, those kind of activities over a longer period, and not the kind of coming in and having lunch with your work colleagues and maybe checking your emails or something in the office and then heading back out. So it's really designed for those other kinds of events.
Yeah, and then so how do you go about applying for your keeping in touch days? Is it through your employer, or do you do it online, or how do women make it happen?
Look, I think with keeping in touch days, the best way that this works is if you have a conversation when you're leaving work to spend some time with your newborn baby, and say, hey, listen, I'm open to, and I want to participate in this and this, and so it's kind of planned out. And then if something arises during the term of your leave, then you've got a good relationship with your employer where they can give you a call, and you can work through that together.
And who pays for them? Is it the employer or?
The employer, the paid days.
Yeah, right. Okay, brilliant. All right, great to chat. Thank you so much. Great conversation around flexibility and keeping in touch. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.